Hi, and welcome to the Kelly Kitley podcast, America's Social Worker Unfiltered, where every week I have hopeful, honest, and deeply human conversations with changemakers. And today I'm so excited to introduce you to Tricia Sims, who has been sober since 2016, and she is the former host of Recovery Happy Hour, which has not over, it has 138 episodes. And I was so grateful to be one of her first guests back in 2018 when she first launched the podcast. And I reference this as a tool in the back of my book as resources for women who are navigating a sober journey and wanting to hear from other people who share their story. So, Tricia, thank you so much for saying yes and for being here today.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time. And as we were talking before and trying to figure out, it is kind of serendipitous how we connect with people on this journey. And we can't even remember how we connected. But I was laughing and said, you got into podcasting way before the big tidal wave of everybody has a podcast now. And I didn't even know how to record. I think I was on the phone with you in my bathroom, locked myself in there because I didn't want the kids to get in. So, why did you decide to start it, and what has your journey been like since you got sober? Like, what made you decide to stop drinking and to live a life in recovery?
Sure. Well, I'll start from the beginning if you want, and then I'll go
Yeah.
into why I started my podcast. Let's see. So, for starters, I'm 45 years old. I live in Dallas, and I mainly grew up in Texas, a little bit all over in early childhood. But I grew up in just a very typical mom and dad house, had an older brother, and I was a people pleaser from day one and wanted to be the perfect kid. And alcoholism also ran in my family. So really I had a bunch of sober people in my family, but nobody talked about it.
Oh, okay.
So my only exposure to alcohol was it's bad, stay away from it. I'd never been around a quote unquote normal drinker.
Okay.
So growing up, I was a high achieving kid. I had uh, undiagnosed ADHD. Like in the 80s, they thought girls couldn't have it. So I was told to shush a lot and, was kind of conditioned to be smaller and quieter and not talk and not, especially not talk about my feelings. If I did, I was whining.
Mhm.
So, you kind of grow up with that conditioning and you start to learn, you start to turn yourself into what you think people want you to be.
Mhm.
My older brother had a severe drug and alcohol problem. And so growing up, he was the main focus. And I tried to be the good kid. I tried to make up for all the stress he was causing on the family
Mhm.
and make the best grades and do all the activities. And had my first drink when I was 16. And I can tell you, I drank for all the wrong reasons from day one. I got dumped by my boyfriend.
Mhm.
I wanted to change the way I felt, and I took 3 shots of whiskey on an empty stomach at 16 years old. I drank alcoholically from day one, and I loved it because it helped me feel out of control. It helped change the way I felt, and I just kept that going. But I also continued to be a super high achiever. So no one ever knew I had a problem. I was getting good grades, I was going to work. I became a chef at a very young age. I was super high achieving as well. And in
Mhm.
the culinary and food and hospitality industry, you drink. That's
Yeah,
your
I grew up in the restaurant and bar
you
business. I
know.
know.
I know, it's like you work 12, 15-hour days and then you go out and you get drunk as quickly as you can with all your coworkers. And it's a badge of honor. And that was my normal. But I also was a blackout drinker from pretty early on too. And so it was weird because I remember my friends would wake up the next day and they were laughing about like last night's hijinks. And I was always really scared of what I did the night before because I could never remember. And I couldn't understand why I was doing things drunk that I would never do sober. I was a totally different person. But
Like what?
like what? What'd you
Yeah.
say?
Like what? What would you do
Oh,
drunk
yeah. Oh,
to
sure. I
sober?
mean, anything, start a fight with a grown man I didn't know, you know, end up with a guy I would have never wanted to end up with. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
drunk driving,
Mhm.
things that I would never, ever,
Sure.
ever do.
Mhm.
Just saying embarrassing things, falling down. I'm a huge klutz. And then he put half a bottle of whiskey in me, and it was bad. It was
Girl,
really,
whiskey. You were off to the races at 16
yeah.
drinking whiskey.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and then you
The
start
drink of
hanging out,
choice.
at bars with a bunch of cooks. You're basically, drinking on a pirate ship every night.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Mm.
yeah, but I was very protective of this thing. I'd show up to work the next day. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. That's my MO my whole life. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Don't worry about me. And in my mid 30s, I went through a surprise divorce. My whole life changed in a day. Like, found out my ex-husband was living a double life, multiple
Oh my
girlfriends
gosh.
on the side. And at that point, I was already a daily drinker, but I was a fancy drinker. I never drank martinis with vodka from a plastic bottle. It was always a glass bottle. It was expensive wine. Like,
Hmm.
like an alcoholic would never drink like that.
Yeah.
But at that point, going through such a huge life-changing event, at that point, I really needed to drink. The heartbreak and the stress felt so impossible that I needed something to numb the pain to get through the day. And about a year, and that really just put the gas pedal on my drinking. And about a year and a half later, I was drinking when I woke up. Because I was so sick from all the alcohol I had had the night before. And I was just starting to become really scared. I was living on my own for the first time, falling downstairs. I was like, there's no reason why I couldn't die in the middle of the night, fall down a flight of stairs, and no one would find me. I was like, it was something really, like, I'm smart enough to know, like, I've had so many chances and so many get out of jail free cards.
Mm.
I'm guessing at this point I've used them all up. And I knew I was going to have to quit someday. I
Hmm.
knew it
I knew
because,
it.
again, it runs in my
Yep.
family. And no
Yep.
matter how hard I tried to
Mhm.
just have one or two, or all the weird rules you put in place, and
Mhm.
all the mental gymnastics, and all the dry Januaries that I couldn't finish,
Mhm.
I knew I was going to have to quit. And I knew, though, I was going to need to be ready. I was going to do it one time.
Yeah.
And yeah, mid-November 2016, I woke up after, a 3-day binge of socially acceptable partying that looks great on Instagram.
Mhm.
But I woke up and went into full detox for about 3 days. I didn't know what it was. I thought I had the flu.
Uh-huh.
I should have gone to the hospital, by the way. That's very dangerous if you're a daily drinker. Don't stop all of a sudden. Talk to
Thank
your
you.
doctor.
Thank you.
And about 3 days into it, I started listening to a podcast. I thought I would just get some data, and that's really what got the ball rolling for me was podcasts. And I would hear people's stories, and I would try what they tried. So I went to a 12-step meeting. I got back to therapy. I was devouring these podcast episodes and listening to stories that sounded like me because it was such a huge relief to
Oh.
know that I wasn't alone because I didn't know there were other high functioning drinkers.
Mhm.
I thought if you were an alcoholic, you were under the bridge drinking out of a brown paper bag. That's what everybody thinks. I don't
All
know.
of us. Yeah.
I don't know where that bridge is where all the people are drinking out of the brown paper bags. But yeah, and just I started trying everything. And I started to feel really good, and I just kept this thing going. I treated recovery like a buffet. If somebody recommended
Love
something,
that.
I
Yeah.
tried it. If it didn't work, I'd try something else, and over the years, trying all different combinations, it's just stuck. And that essentially is what got me into starting my podcast in 2018 was to fill a hole in the podcast world where
Mhm.
the drunk stories are so important, but I
Yeah.
couldn't find a podcast where people were talking about their lives after they quit
Mhm.
drinking. I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, I spent all this time getting sober. What's next? I don't
Yeah.
want to talk about the sad stuff. Like, what
Yeah.
are we doing that's fun? And so that's when I started Recovery Happy Hour in 2018 and started interviewing guests who'd had at least 1 year of sobriety. And we talked about what happens after.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
that's
It was
what
like
we
you were
got
doing
there.
your research. In interview it continuing down that path as I love that language that you use, the buffet of recovery and picking out things that worked for you. And I think oftentimes people do struggle to find the right thing that works for them, and they hear like you have to do this and this works, and it's like, well, that didn't work for me,
Right.
and I want to stay not drinking, but I need to find another outlet because nobody wants to just stop drinking and not work on the growth that comes with that.
Right.
And so that is so important.
It
What were
is.
some of your favorite podcasts that you listened to?
The one that really got my foot off the ground was Recovery Elevator.
Oh,
He
I
was one of
haven't.
the early
Okay.
adopters, and he's still going, has hundreds of episodes.
Oh,
I ended up going on Recovery Elevator when I was 30 days sober to talk. I know, right? Where did those balls come from, you know?
seriously. Oh my gosh.
But I did it because I wanted that accountability. Because I was like, if I don't tell the world, I'm gonna find a way to go back to it. I know myself. And so I wanted to just like get it out there, make it public, maybe help somebody along the way. But
Mhm.
selfishly, it was for personal accountability.
Yeah.
That was a big one that I listened to for a long time. And then, some other ones along the way. Dopey was out at the time. Dharma Punks. Gosh, it's been so long. I can't
Yeah.
remember what I listened
Yeah.
to.
So,
Yeah, I just devoured those stories.
and I know you just had a birthday, right?
Mhm.
And then will you celebrate 10 years in November of this
Yeah, it'll be 10 years in November, which is so wild because it sounds like such a long time.
year?
But it doesn't feel like it. Sometimes it feels like it's been like 10 days. I mean, you just forget, like not drinking becomes your normal.
Mhm.
And the discovery process of learning who you are is ever changing. Like we never arrive.
Yeah.
So you're always peeling back layers of the onion, and getting a new mental health diagnosis or learning that you had this thing the whole time or you're in perimenopause and you're trying to figure out is it hormones or is it what, it's like
Yeah.
so you're always discovering it never gets old.
Oh my gosh, because you have a willingness.
Yeah, and you don't have you're not dumping a depressant all over your brain. So you can actually truly like feel things and figure things out and like get stuff done in therapy too, which is nice.
Well, and I think that it is admirable for people like yourself who do want to continue to grow and evolve. And it is so important to hear, I didn't just arrive at a place and now I get to coast. It is, we are all a work in progress. And so, you shared some hard things in recovery too, like um going through grief and a divorce that was something that you didn't expect, and then also seemingly found another love in your life now that you're married again. And are you still working in the restaurant business? Are you a chef?
No, I've had so many major life changes since then. I met my now husband when I was about 10 or 11 months sober. And I exited the restaurant industry. I've been actually studying for the last 3 months to become a Pilates instructor. So I should be on the schedule and working next week. But yeah,
Ah,
yeah, trying Pilates, reformer Pilates was a big part of my own personal journey. About 16 months sober, I took my first reformer Pilates class, and exercise has always been really valuable to me, and for my mental health.
mhm.
But that was the first type of movement that I learned that really got me to check into my own body. I used to use exercise as a way to kind of punish myself,
Yep. Hmm. Hmm.
running marathons,
Hmm.
CrossFit, like,
Hmm.
sweat out last night's booze. It was
Yeah.
always no pain, no gain. And Pilates has, like I said, has really gotten me into my body to listen to it and to give it what it needs rather than what I think I need to like, push on it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've been doing that for 8 years and I'll be an instructor here within a week or so. Thank
Congratulations.
you. Yeah. I mean, it's wild. I owned a business at the time when I was getting sober. And in sobriety, I learned that I didn't want to do that anymore. and I did all the hard steps to exit a business, to close it down. Like I did the hard stuff. You kind of figure out the real you when you quit drinking, not the you think you should be,
Mhm.
not the you that you think other people's want you to be. It's like you become the real you. And then you start to make the life changes to accommodate you and yourself. And if you're not living your life for yourself,
Mhm.
what's the point?
Yeah,
You
and
know?
it really seems like you found a lot of clarity in that too, because
Absolutely.
doing all of those things in sobriety is hard, but it's also like, could you imagine if you were still drinking and trying to go through all of that?
God, no, I cannot. Oh my God, no.
So
No way.
how do because I think sometimes the misconception is that you stop drinking, and life is just wonderful. And
Hmm.
it can be really hard,
Yeah.
especially in that first year. And we start
Mm.
noticing, that our sleep is jacked up and our anxiety is off the charts. And, maybe we go into a depressive state. And so I'm always so curious because I think a lot of times substance use disorder and mental health issues go hand in hand, whether the drug or alcohol causes some of those things, or if we're self-medicating
Hmm.
um, with substances to quiet the noise. And so when you have this clarity and you notice that you're managing all these other components, and you mentioned, ADHD as well, how do you manage the brain component today as a 45-year-old woman?
Such an interesting question. Um, so I always thought that anxiety was my problem, right? I remember my first like panic attack in the second grade. I mean, I was always just a tightly wound little girl. And that was just like my roommate in my head my whole life. And I drank to quiet it down, to relax. And then I noticed at the end of my drinking that drinking was really causing my anxiety to get worse. So when I stopped drinking, I did feel some immediate relief on the anxiety, even though this was hard. And I was like, oh God, what are we doing? What are we doing? This is so difficult. Can I do this? But the physical manifestation of anxiety was really starting to go away, which was a great relief. But over time, you start to dig into that. Well, why? What's underneath that? And I'm a control freak, I'm a compulsive perfectionist. I want everything I do to be perfect. I want to be loved, You
Uh-huh.
start to learn these things and it's like, okay, well, then let's start working on our control issues. Let's start working on our perfectionism. Let's, do some inner child healing. Like there are so many different facets of your brain and so many behavioral patterns that you learn that you don't even realize you've learned. They're just how you are. And once you start to deconstruct that with a clear head and hopefully a licensed mental health professional, it's endless. It's endless to always figure out okay, like I said, it's such a relief to have the clarity of mind to look back on my day and look at my behaviors as an observer rather than not be stuck inside of it, and being able to separate that. Um, is so healthy, I think, for all of us to learn how to do just to observe ourselves without feeling guilt and shame and going, okay, that's interesting. Okay, well, we're going to try better at that. Okay, or I wonder what that's about. Maybe I'll talk about that with my therapist next time.
Yeah.
Like these are just observations. Once we start taking out like everything being so personal and making us feel so ashamed, it really makes things easier when you can just observe yourself. And that's something I learned in sobriety for 100%.
Trisha, I'm like getting teary-eyed. I'm not your therapist, but I feel like such a proud therapist. I'm like, you have done the work.
Yeah.
And, sometimes I hear people say, like, oh, well, they're never going to change. They're always going to be like that. Can people really change in middle age? And it's like, yes. And I've even seen people change in their 70s and 80s. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
if there's a dedication to wanting to do that, again, that
Hmm.
willingness, then
Hmm.
you can. And so, like, just to hear you unravel some of that is so amazing.
Thank you. Oh, thanks. The
Sure.
people pleaser in me really needed that little pat on the back from you, Kelly. No, and actually, something else I want to point out that is wildly important
Yeah.
is service. Like when you are drinking, and this is something I want to make sure that everyone hears me say.
Okay.
When you were drinking, and especially in the last year of my drinking, I was obsessed with, is my problem bad enough?
Mhm.
Nobody else thinks I have a problem. Is it really that bad? Am I really an alcoholic? Should I really need to quit? And the mental gymnastics and that obsession, it keeps you centered on yourself. You're self-centered, right? And so when people hear self-centered, they're like, "Oh, I'm not." And it's like, "No, but how often are you thinking about yourself?" That is being self-centered. So in when you quit drinking and you start learning about feeling better and then service, you want to share your story with somebody else who's struggling because you know that that's going to help them. And then inevitably there's a reward from that for yourself as well. It feels good to help somebody. So once you learn to get out of your head and start helping people around you, you become less self-centered. And then that ultimately is like what the whole world needs, right? We all we all need to help each other out. So service work is something that is an essential piece of my recovery. Um, I love the podcast started out of a need to be of service, right? But now it's like I also volunteer every week for the last 3 years with teen girls. And it's actually a rehabilitation program for human trafficking. And I go and just do art with them every week.
Ah,
And that service work has nothing to do with drinking, but
yeah.
it's me getting out of my head and doing something for someone who needs it, getting them out of their head for an hour. That critical piece is not just for recovery, like that's for humanity. So
Yeah.
once we all get our heads out of our asses and start helping other people, like, drinking or
Sure.
not, I promise
Yeah.
will
Oh
yield
my
the
gosh.
reward.
If
Yeah,
that were like a life requirement to be of service
right,
to other people, for sure.
right. Yeah.
And you're so smart and artistic and like very dynamic for
Thank you.
this like perfectionistic pleasing people person. Like that's just a piece of it. And then you're like, I mean, anybody who's watching, you have a full sleeve of tattoos and like you're just badass.
Hey, I didn't get that until I was 40, by the way. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, tattoos and sobriety, right? It's like
Okay.
it's
Uh,
um, so was it hard for you to decide, like, how did you know? Because I think, another interest of mine is this whole podcasting world, right? Like, this is a labor of love. I have amazing conversations with people, mostly women, about their journey, and then use these clips as resources for other people.
mhm.
And I'm getting close to 50 episodes, and I'm like, wow, this is great. This is a lot of work, but I love doing it. At what point, 4 years in, did you say, "Okay, I think this is the last episode?" Like, and was there a loss there for you?
A good question too. So I did the podcast 2018 to 2021, and then at that point, the podcast was really successful. It took off about 6 months in, and was much bigger than I had ever expected. And I mean
You
that. Like
making
I
money
thought,
off of it? Did you
what?
were you making money off of it? You had
Oh yeah,
sponsors and
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I still do. It's wonderful. I mean, not a lot anymore, but yeah, it still comes.
Woo! Yeah.
I mean, it was the dream.
Uh-huh.
But I thought I'd be listening, like I'd have like, four friends listen to it. And that was not the case. It's been downloaded, I got probably close to 2 million times at this point.
Oh my gosh.
Very thankful for that. But in
Yeah.
2021, at that point, there was just a huge, there's a huge shift in recovery, the sober curious movement, celebrities talking about getting sober. It became a normal conversation. Thank
Mhm.
God, right? I'd
Mhm.
like to think that my podcast helped contributed to that.
Yes.
But I also at the time was climbing the corporate ladder. I was working for a corporate restaurant group. I was working a lot and I was really focused on that. And I had to make a decision if I was going to go full-time podcast or continue building my career in my real life.
Mhm.
And I also was having a hard time with some of my fans and listeners. You know, people in early recovery are a sensitive group of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, just some of their entitlement really kind of got to me. I was getting some nasty emails or people thinking that they could tell me what to do with my life, whether it was they were mad because I got a COVID vaccine or they were mad because I was making money. It was everyone's mad about something.
Okay. Well, yeah, you
And
put yourself out there and people
yeah,
feel like they can tell you whatever.
yeah. And I didn't even share my story on my own podcast. I really kept it like listener focused on the stories. But I was just like, I don't have to do this. And I had put out at that point 135 episodes, and I was like, you know what? Those episodes are going to live on forever. They are wonderful resources,
Mhm.
and they're still there. And I was like, I'm just going to let it be, and I can always go back to it.
Sure.
I
Oh,
can always go back to it. And actually, so I hate to like jump to a different
no,
subject, but if I don't say this now, I know I'm going to forget.
for sure.
For your listeners who are wondering, how much did Trisha drink? I want to know if I qualify. Do I drink like her? Okay, that was my question all the time. Okay, am I bad enough to be an alcoholic? Am I bad enough to quit? I drank a lot, okay, every day.
Mhm.
Sometimes it was a bottle of wine, sometimes it was two bottles and three martinis. You just never knew.
Right.
But what really mattered is how much I was thinking about alcohol, right? The mental gymnastics. Am I planning for my hangover the next day? I'm driving home from work. Oh, do I have enough booze in the freezer? Or do I need to go to the liquor store? Oh, I better hurry. They're about to close. Oh, I got to plan tomorrow to sleep in late. I got to cancel this so I have enough time to nurse that hangover. Like it was all okay. I'm going to go out tonight, but I'm only going to have two. So I better have two at home before I go out. And then I can keep drinking when I get home. It was the
Insanity.
constant obsession of thinking about it.
Yes.
That is so hard to quantify, but that is the most important data in deciding if you need to give it a break. I just want to make sure everyone hears that. Don't
Ah,
focus on what you're drinking. Focus on how much you're thinking about drinking.
the obsession of mind.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
people can't see that. They can't
Yeah.
see it. You can feel it.
Well, look, I think ultimately, if we're questioning and we ultimately have a feeling, whether we've been exposed to it in our own family of origin or whatever it might be, there is a quiet whisper that I think many of us go through when we ultimately decide to give it up completely. And it's listening to that whisper and not trying to convince ourselves otherwise.
Yeah, and also the alcohol's not going anywhere. If you give up drinking and you decide you want to quit, it'll still be there when you go back to it. It's not going anywhere,
Hmm.
you
Uh-huh.
know? I mean, I'm like, don't worry. You can try it. It's okay. You can go back.
See how that works for you.
Yeah.
This last piece I do want to ask you about in being a married woman and meeting your husband and 11 months sober. Um, how did you guys meet? Is he in recovery? How does he support your recovery today?
Sure. Well, sober dating is weird. I can tell you that. That's one of the hardest things I've ever done because I had to tell people, no, I don't want to go out for drinks.
Yeah.
I don't drink alcohol. And some people had a hard time with that. And that says a lot about them and not much about me. So, I met my husband. He is not in recovery. He's what you call a normal drinker.
Uh-huh.
He was kind of perplexed by it at first. He was like, oh, I wonder if I can do this.
Uh-huh.
But then he realized he was never going to get into an argument with a drunk woman. And he was all in. He was like, this is awesome. She's such a cheap date. So he was into it. And
Oh,
so always has been. Also, we talked to me maybe about a couple of years ago. He's like, there is part of me that always thought maybe someday you could go and like have a beer normally and it wouldn't be a big deal. And I honestly didn't think it would be like this forever. And I was like, oh yeah, babe, that's not coming back. I can't just have one beer. And luckily, there are 900 million non-alcoholic canned mocktails and beers out there now. So
right.
I can just have a beer that is good for me personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting for him at first. And also we met on a dating app. So it was very, traditional in
Yeah.
these days of
Yeah.
dating. But I was very upfront with everybody that I met that no, I don't drink and it's for this reason and it is what it is, take it
Yeah.
or leave it. So
Yeah. And something that I think sometimes in early sobriety, people are really afraid to say out loud, and what other people will think of them and being in
mhm.
different social circles,
Yeah,
Um,
it's the most wonderful filter. It seems like you're limiting yourself at the beginning, and then you realize it's a big help to just filter that out altogether and find the right people that want to know you in your present, in your healthiest state. And ultimately, if they're worth it, be around to support you. My husband bought me my podcast equipment and helped me get started back in the day. So
gosh.
yeah, he's really been a huge contributor to the recovery happy hour version of Tricia. And my recovery has been a big part of our relationship, of its foundation. And yeah, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't stopped drinking. I wouldn't have all these amazing gifts and relationships in my life had I not really put in the work and decided to choose myself.
Well, thank you for deciding to do that because we're all benefiting from it. And
Thank you. Thank you.
will you do anything to celebrate your 10 year? Are you big on anniversaries or do you treat it like any other day or
Some years I do. Last year I was like, meh, the gift is that it feels normal. But 10 years is a milestone. I haven't really put any thought to it, but I should do something. I should really like have an actual party or something. That might be fun. So, I've got 6 months to figure it out.
yeah.
But that's a good idea. Thanks for planting the seed in my head.
Sure. I mean, it is. I think the celebratory component of sobriety is so important.
Yep, that is exactly what Recovery Happy Hour was all about. It was like finding life beyond the bottle,
Mhm.
finding the joy of missing out. And then now that there's all these incredible drink options for us out there,
Mhm.
you're not missing out on anything. Like that is so fun to go out and find all the amazing non-alcoholic options we have so that you can celebrate as much as you want.
Sure, sure. And that's not triggering to taste non-alcoholic beer for you, was it at for here I can't stop talking to you. I'm like, wait, let me ask you this question.
No, please do.
Because it is when I first got sober, I mean, there was no NA beers, but like
Yeah, there were like two.
the 12 step, suggestion was not to because it can be really triggering. So I
Right.
didn't until like 10 years sober try a non-alcoholic beer. Now I
Mhm.
love them. I think it quenches my thirst. But how about for you? Do you like the mocktail options or any
Yeah, so it's
other?
different for everyone. Of course, listen to your body and if something triggers you, don't go there. But for me, non-alcoholic beer was not a trigger at first. At first, when I tasted it, it didn't trigger me, but it felt real naughty. I was like,
Yeah.
ooh, am I allowed to do this? But it didn't trigger me. Now, non-alcoholic wine is that's a little touch and go for me. It still
Uh-huh.
doesn't feel right for me
Okay.
to drink.
Uh-huh.
But that's just for me. And all the canned mocktails out there, they're really, again, really just not for me or not triggering for me at all. I love them. There's a really fabulous nitro mocktail espresso martini that I love. Oh my God, it's so good. So those things, I'm like, yes, give it all to me. And then I'm up all night because of the caffeine. But
Sure. I was like, can you have that for breakfast?
yeah,
This sounds
I
really
know. Oh,
good.
that's a good idea. No, but it's different for everyone. But no, for me personally, it hasn't been triggering. And if something is, I know just not to finish it and not to have it again.
Mhm.
What
Mhm.
I think that with all the wonderful options out there, as long as somebody is feeling secure in their recovery, like it's fun to go out there and try it and see what's good and what's not. Non-alcoholic champagne. Oh, it's my favorite. It feels so celebratory. Some people might get triggered by that, but I don't personally, so I go for it.
Sure. And if you try it and you notice you feel triggered, don't do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not breaking any rules.
Yeah.
Well, some people say, "Oh, well, it still has alcohol in it." No, do your research because so
Yeah.
does a banana.
Yeah.
There's, a non-alcoholic. It's like they say the labeling requirements is what is it,
Yeah.
0.05% or
Yeah.
less, which is, yeah, I think a banana has like zero point zero 0.08. I mean, it's wild. It's wild. But the point is, listen to your body and do what's right for your recovery.
I love that. That's a
Mhm.
good tagline. And this is a suggestion, another seed I'll plant for you. You are so good with words and the way you explain things and the metaphors you use and all of that. I hope you write a book someday.
Oh, thank
Um,
you. Everyone has told me that, and I just can't get off my ass to do it.
you don't have to. You get to sit and do it.
It's just the discipline to
It's
sit
a,
and
it's
write.
it's a lot of work, but
I
I
have a
do.
lot of admiration for you for putting out a whole book.
Oh, thank you. But I think a podcast is another way to kind of story tell and change lives too. And however people do that, whether it's through visual or audio or written, the important piece is the messaging is getting out there. So
Yeah, but
I'm
thank
so
you.
grateful our paths crossed all these
Me
years ago and
too.
that
Look at us still doing the damn thing.
we're still sober. All right. I love it. Well, thank you to everybody for listening. And you can find the link to the Recovery Happy Hour podcast in the show notes, and a friendly reminder to be the change you wish to see in the world, whether that starts within your family, your neighborhood, or the world. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.